I'm all about helping you play with purpose and making your life as a serious simmer as easy as possible. To be a serious simmer means also to be an organized, creative, and sentimental simmer. Not always easy to balance all these things at the same time, though. That's where having a system to support you comes in handy. In this new series, I want to share deep dives into the Sim Guardian, the ultimate Notion system I've built to keep track of everything I care about when it comes to The Sims and any other live sim games I might play in the future. It's where I collect my ideas, my lore, and everything I've achieved so that I have something to look back on. If you're a serious simmer curious to know more about the Sim Guardian and even already own it, this video is for you. Today we're going to start with the heart of the Sim Guardian, your save file records. As you can see right now, we're on the home page of the Sim Guardian, and if you scroll down, you'll see this is where our save files are also collected. This is where you have quick access to any of the save files you've already created, or also a button to create a new one at any time. You can collect just one save file or multiple save files across all of the different games you play. So for example, in the Sim Guardian right now, by default, you can collect save files for The Sims 1, Sims 2, 3, and 4. You might be Team Forever Save and might just want to commit to one save file, but maybe you play The Sims 2 and The Sims 4 as well. With the Sim Guardian, you can keep track of both save files in one system. There's no need to make a second copy, it's all in one. What's also really neat is on this first page, on this home page, on this overview of our save files, we also have more information about each save file and these little gallery cards as well. So if we just take this save file as an example, this record, you can see at one glance what day of the year it is currently in that save file and also which year we're currently in. So you can see the day, the season, and the year. You can see how much of the year has gone by. So we've completed 14% of that save file, so to say, of that save file's sim year. And then we have 24 days left to go in that particular save file. Now time works differently between The Sims 2, 3, and 4. So it was a bit tricky for me to figure out how to consolidate that in the system, but no worries, I've already done all that background work and share more details in that save file themselves and of course in the companion guide on how to set up your calendar for each of the different games, because it does work slightly differently. But that makes it possible for you to actually see this. So you can see for every save file, for every type of game, so whether you're playing The Sims 2, The Sims 3, or The Sims 4, how many days are left in your particular sim year, depending on the season settings you chose and the length of any given year. I've also made a free Notion template called the Sim Year Tracker, which actually when I created that, it inspired me to add this extra info because it's actually a little update. Since I released the Sim Guardian, this is now new. So before you already had some of the other details like the current household that you're playing in the save file or when it was last played, which is also quite neat. But now we also have information about how much time is left in the year. And so I just find that it's just extra info that you wouldn't get, for example, if you open up the game. And I also like how it gamifies your gameplay because there normally isn't really any goal in The Sims other than just having fun, right? But here you see, okay, a goal here automatically is, oh, I want to complete that sim year, that current sim year. I have 80 days left to go. Because for me, when it comes to playing with purpose, I feel like it means also making progress, ideally. And so this small detail still has a big impact in that essence because it just gives you that overview and that motivation to push for. Maybe this one it seems like a lot, 80 days, but let's see, 6 days left to go. This one I might want to jump in to get that quick low hanging fruit. But as you can see, we don't only have the information about the time that's gone by in the save file, we also have the current household and when it was last played. So if you have recorded a sim session, which is essentially a play session for that save file, the date you last played it will also be shown here. So if we scroll up here in the sidebar, you'll see this is where you can start to record your sim session. The homepage by default is locked, so you can't directly click into the record here, but you can open it by just clicking on the title. And then from here, if I wanted to start a sim session, I would just click on the save file that I'm currently playing. Let's say I'm playing Ida's save file. It is Sims 4, so that's important. You have to fill those two in before you start a sim session. And then you also click this button here. And then you can actually just click the start button. And again, we have a pop-up here that reminds us, did you add the game and save file to the sim session record, which we have. So we're like, okay, ready to go. I'm ready to play. And now it's beginning to track the time that you're playing. And so if I close that, you'll see that's updated here. It includes the game and the save file that I noted. And if I want to add notes, I can just, again, open up the record and I can add any notes I want to take about the particular session I'm playing now. I'll close that for now. And then if you scroll down, you'll see this has been updated with the save file that I'm currently playing, or the last played save file basically. And then if I scroll further down, you'll see that now Ida's save file, the gallery record preview here, has been updated to say that I last played it today. So this is all happening in the background with formulas. Apart from what I just now showed you, there's nothing that you have to do on your own. It took a while to get this all set up, but I think it's just really cool, and I think it's also very useful. And so from the home page is how you could access any of your existing save files. You would simply click on it, and then that save file will open up in its own page, in its own full page. So this is a save file record I have for a Sims 4 save file I've been playing since 2022. But I'll actually just go back because I want to show you how you could create a new save file in the Sim Guardian. So when you first get the Sim Guardian, all of this will be empty. You won't see any of these save files because of course this is my Sim Guardian. These are save files I've saved. There is one demo save file for the Sims 4, but apart from that, you won't have much to look at here, but you can always add a new save file via this button here. So if I click it, you'll see it opens a new page in the side peek view, and it applies the Sims 4 template. So this is already set up, assuming that you're playing the Sims 4, and then all you would do is add, your save file name, whatever you want to name it. You'd say maybe it started today or another day in the past. So you can change that as you need. It's important to always click this button here. And once you've done that, you can start filling in information on the page. Now I'll open up this in full page view, and then I can see more. So once you've created your save file and done those first steps, you can start adding a description. So you could just, description here. And whatever you add there will also automatically show up in this little gallery card here. This is basically your little overview for the save file. If you've recorded a sim session for the save file, then it'll also tell you when you last played. And so that's basically how you create a new save file. But what if you're playing The Sims 2 or Sims 3 or even Sims 1? How do you create a save file record with the correct template? Because when you create a save file record in the Sim Guardian, there are different templates that can be applied based on the type of game you're playing. So there are two ways. If you like to play all the different games, and maybe you mostly play The Sims 4, then we can leave the button as is. Like I mentioned, by default, it always applies the Sims 4 template. But once you've created the template, you can convert it into a Sims 2, 3, or 1 template after the fact. So to do so, you simply delete all of the content on the page. So I'll do that right now. Boom. And now you'll see the different templates listed here that you can use. So we have a Sims 4, 3, 2, 1 template, and we also have a light template that is missing some of the extra features like the calendar and stuff like that. So if you just want a bare bones kind of save file template and you don't want to bother with any of the extra bells and whistles, but in this case, I want it to be a Sims 3 save file template. So I'll click that. So now it has applied the Sims 3 template. It doesn't look like much has changed, but believe me, there are some nuances here and there that have changed to make it to a Sims 3 template. The only thing now that we have to change in this record is the game associated with it. So we just click on game, and then we deselect Sims 4 and we select Sims 3 instead. Now we have a Sims 3 save file record. We've already added the description. And so my next step would be generally to add the calendar. The instructions on how to do so you'll find in this toggle menu here. I also have thorough tutorial videos in the companion guide that explain step by step how to create your calendar for The Sims 4, 3, or 2. It's not hard, but it is a couple of steps just to get it set up, which you only have to do once per save file record. I won't get into that today since I already made a video about that in the companion guide, and it's only really relevant once you actually have the Sim Guardian. So instead, I will show an example of the calendar in another save file later, but for now, I'll close that. I do want you to get an idea of what maybe the next steps would be when you create a save file, and I would say that would be to start creating records for your properties, your households, and your Sims. But first, a quick overview of the page itself. So as you can see here, we have our header with the name and some core details. We have our add and edit description toggle here, which we've already used. Then we have to the left a sidebar and to the right a sidebar. And then we have in the middle various sections where a bunch of linked views are tucked away, which are used to help organize all of the things that you add to your save file record. So the plans, the characters, lore, etc. And so here in this left sidebar, we have, for one, that overview gallery card. Once you've set up your calendar, you'll have a little mini calendar here with a little button that you can use to easily progress the time in your save file. You also have here a create box where you have a bunch of buttons to quickly create a new legacy character or a memory. A memory is basically a little story, a snapshot. So if you want to collect a screenshot in your Sim Guardian, if you want to collect residential, community properties, if you want to create a group. And then we also have here a sidebar where you can see any pinned resources you have that are related to The Sims 3 in this case. Also here in the create section here, you have a reference cheats button, which you can click, and then it'll open up the cheats database where you can see all of the different cheats that you've collected. Well, I've collected for you already out the gate, but of course you can collect more here as well. But this is where you can reference them easily. What's that for now? And so just for example, I think I'll create a new character, a build, and a household, just to show, by example, what that would look like. So you would do that from here. So let's start with a new character. And so once we click that button, it opens up here in side peek view, and we have various different templates that we can choose from. So depending first on the game you're playing, so here you can see we have our Sims 4, our Sims 3, we have here a quick demo template that I made for Sims 2, and we have here our Sims 2 templates and our Sims 1 templates. And so depending on the type of character you're creating, so if it's a normal Sim, or even if it's a pet or horse, you have different profiles. In this case, we are creating a Sim for a Sims 3 save file, so we're going to create a character profile for the Sims 3. So I click that, and that automatically applies the correct game to the character record. We already have the correct save file associated with it because we clicked the button within the save file record. You can also create characters directly from within the database, so the characters database, which you'll find on the homepage of the Sim Guardian. But I recommend creating your characters and your properties and whatnot directly from within the save file record that it's associated with. If it's associated already with one, you might just be creating characters just for the sake, and then maybe they're not associated with a save file yet. This will ensure that they're always linked with that save file, but if you don't, then you always can still add it. So first we can add a name. Let's call them Iris Green. Always important before filling out any of the details on the actual page is to click this button here. I'll actually make this page a little bit larger because I want to keep my save file record open here, but that's the beauty of the side peek view. I can still be basically in both pages at the same time with the side peek view, but I'll just continue. Open up add and edit details. I can add a backstory right now if I wanted to, but I'll skip that. I'll just stick to adding some core details. So I'll say this person was made by me. Profile photo, so I'll just grab a quick placeholder there. I can also replace the icon here with that placeholder image. So I will upload the image here, basically just drag it into here, save. And then I have the little icon there as well as their photo. I can add a life state, so that would be human, I'll say. Age, just for testing purposes, I added preteen. I'll just remove that. That was for a question from a simmer. So I'll just delete that since I don't play with preteens. That does not come out of the box, but you can add preteen ages if you want to the Sim Guardian. You would just have to add that to the character, plans, memories, and photos databases. So that can actually be added quite quickly. So you just edit the property, you go here, you write preteen, you have to actually spell it correctly. Boom, there we go. And if you do that for all of the different databases, then you're good to go. But I'll delete that for now. Because there are some formulas in the system that reference the age, but if you add the age and spell it the same way for every single database, then there's no problem and the formulas will just reference that. So if you ever wanted to add an extra age, that's how you can do it. But for now, I'll just say this is an adult. It is a woman, it's a she, her, and I could also add the year created if I wanted to. So that's, for example, if you want to keep track of your achievements. So what year do we have? 2025. If it's a notable character, I would check that off here. I'm not going to do this at the moment, but I could also add personality details, so sexual orientation, traits. Traits are already collected in the Sim Guardian in my attributes database, so you would just have to, pick one. Let me see if I can remember a Sims 3 trait. So that is not a Sims 3 trait. So you would just type in the trait. What would be a Sims clumsy maybe? Yeah, clumsy is a Sims 3 trait. So I could select that and add that as a trait. And since it's a Sims 3 character, we also have, of course, zodiac signs, favorites. So anything that's relevant to a Sims 3 character would show up here as select options. We can also add parents, children, other relationships, and whatnot. I won't go into too much detail with that because I think I'll do a deep dive for characters. But this is just, real quick. If you want to just add the core details of a sim, this is how you could add a sim to your save file. So I'll close that now. And then when I open up the characters section here, and I scroll down, you'll see Iris Green is now listed as an adult. So we have different categories here where your Sims are organized based on their state. So if they're living, deceased, if they're single, coupled up, and whatnot. I'll go more into detail about that when I show you save files that I've already established in my Sim Guardian. So that was basically, in a nutshell, how to add a character, just simple couple details. And now we want to maybe add that character's household. And so I'll click on the household button. Only 2 templates exist for households. So you've got the general one, which applies to Sims 4, 3, and 2. And then we have the Sims 1 household template. So if you were to play in the Sims 1, you would just delete all the content on this page and apply the Sims 1 template, similar to how we did it for the save file beforehand. But the next step is we want to give this a name. So we'll call it the Green Household. Then we'll click on this button. It's always important to click that. And also anything else up here that is empty, we would fill that in. But it's already pre-filled for us based on the template we selected. And then we'll open up the details, the core details. So we need to add members to the household. I have a bunch of Sims here that I've already added to my Sim Guardian. They'll all be listed here, but I can just look for Iris. And there she is. And so I can add her that way. I can also unlink her by just clicking on that button. And then if I want to add her back, I just click the button. There we go. I can't add a property quite yet because I haven't added properties to my save file yet, to this particular save file record. But once I do, I can then associate a property with this household. Also, if there are any rental units, so this is, I think, more specific to Sims 4, but I kind of like to keep anything that was added in a newer game, sometimes for older games, because I don't know, I just think sometimes you can make believe and play pretend that residential rentals exist for The Sims 3 as well in some capacity, so I kind of kept that in. I dive more in the companion guide on how to set up rental units. I can also do a deep dive if you want, if you're curious. Basically, if your Sim, if you have a Sims 4 household, be more relevant for that, of course, then you would add the main property here, and then the rental unit within that property would be linked here so that you have the household listed as a tenant for that particular residential rental. I'll just close that up here. And so we have space for additional details as well. So you can add a description. So you'll see this little icon a lot in the Sim Guardian. If you see this little gear icon, that means that this is a formula property and there's nothing you need to do there. Anything regarding that will happen automatically. So if I add funds to my character, I'll go more into depth about how that works in a character's profile deep dive. But essentially any funds that the characters have will be collected automatically in the background and shown here so that you have in total your household funds. This lets you collect funds individually on a sim by sim basis. If you're not into micromanaging, there's also a simple way to just get rid of the formula and make this a simple number field, but I get into that in the companion guide. And then here we have the net worth. So that would be the household funds combined with any properties that are owned by the Sims. So I believe the main property, actually, the house, the home of the household. Yes, exactly. So it says here in this info box as well, it's the sum of the current household's funds together with the volume of their home. So that is automatically tiled up here. And if there are any legacies associated with this household, you can link them here. If you play rotationally, you can note the order of the household here. So if it's a household you play, if it's household number 1, then you can add that number here. And you can also add infinite amount of more numbers to this list as well. You can also pick the round that you're currently playing with that household. And you can also add a photo for the household if you have one. So that's basically how to create a new household. We also have various sections here, but I'm not going to dive into that today. Again, like I said, I just want to show you how to get started with your save file. And so let's close that. And last but not least for today, I will be adding a property as well. It's super easy to add other bits as well. So a legacy, memories and stuff like that, but I will just, start with the basics. And so let's create a residential property. So I'll click that button here. Then I'll give it a name. So I'll call it the Green Home. And then I will fill in anything here that is empty. So we have this game and the associated save file automatically linked, but now we can just note if it has CC or not. And we can also click this button. always remember to click this button before filling anything out here. Then we open up this little add details toggle like before. It's basically the same structure throughout the entire system to keep things consistent and make it easier to navigate. But now we could indicate the build status. I'm not much of a builder, so I most likely downloaded this from the gallery, or maybe it was an existing build in the save file. You could also choose existing build. So you have various options here depending on what is correct. You can also make it be undergoing renovations. That is fun. I'll go more into detail, of course, in another video about how properties work and how you can manage that. I think that is particularly useful to know if you're a builder or maybe you're a save file, maker, so you like to create custom save files. Then it's nice to keep track, of course, of the different builds that you're making for your save file. But I'm not much of a builder, so I'm pretty much always here. It's either existing build or gallery download for me, so I'm just gonna choose existing build. The lot category is automatically applied. It's a residential lot because, we click the residential property button, but if, it were to change, you can change it to a community here. And then to get more granular, you have the property type option here. So let's say it's just a normal home. So we'll add that. Oh, it's a house. Yes, I have house for home and tiny home for tiny home. But you can also customize this any way you'd like. So you can change the name, you can add a new option, so it's super easy. Let's just say this is a Sims 3 game. So we don't have sizes like this. You don't actually have like particular sizes in The Sims 3 really. It's pretty all over the board. And so in this case, I like to use small, medium, or large. And so let's say this is a medium. Oh no, it's just one person. Let's say she's living in a small house. So I can add that. Since this is a Sims 3 house, technically it would only be associated with a world. But if you wanted, you could in your database, in your worlds and neighborhoods database, you could create neighborhoods for your Sims 3 world so that you could be more specific about where the homes are in your world. I think it's fun to break down a Sims 3 world into different neighborhoods just because they are often so vast. I actually really like a custom save file called St. Clair, which actually comes with a map indicating different neighborhoods. That is something you could take on into your own Sim Guardian. So I actually believe I saved those myself because like I said, I use a St. Clair save file. So I think actually out the gate in your Sim Guardian, if you were to get it, those neighborhoods will already be pre-saved. But that's something that you can definitely customize to your liking. But for now, I'll just select St. Clair generally, because that's the first one that comes to mind right now when I think of a world for Sims 3. So I'll associate the home with St. Clair. Let's say it has 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Let's say it's a value of 20 grand. Again, I will use a placeholder thumbnail here. I usually don't replace the icon in the case of properties, but you could if you wanted. Date completed is not relevant for me, neither year, because like I said, I'm never usually making the homes myself. But if you were a builder and you wanted to keep track of when you completed a build, you could add the date here. And if you want to collect it as an achievement, you can also add the year here. And then it'll be listed as one of your achievements on the My Goals page. So we have a My Goals dashboard. If we scroll down here, if we go to plan, My Goals, it's saved there, and that's where you'll have like an overview of everything you've achieved that you've created, so including Sims that you've created and skills and achievements that you've achieved on a Sim basis. And then for additional details, you could add also a description. You could indicate the owner, so in this case it'll be Iris. She doesn't only live here, but she also owns the home. Any achievements associated with it, but that'll be more on the achievement side of things, so you don't really have to add anything there. It's a 1-story home. You can add any amenities it has. Let's say it has a washer dryer, a fireplace. Lot and trait challenges is more or less, I think, only relevant for Sims 4. So you can skip that. Style could be relevant. So let's say it's a cottage. If you downloaded the build, then you can also add the creator here. So there's an extra creators database in the Sim Guardian where you can collect different creators of mods, Sims and whatnot, challenges. And so let's say the creator is Bojana Sims. She's a great builder for The Sims 4. I don't think for The Sims 3, but let's just add her here. That's how you could add them. If it's a new creator that maybe doesn't exist in your Sim Guardian, so let's just call him creator, then you could just create new creator. And you could even have, like if it's a collab, you could have 2 creators connected. But let's just say only creator created this. So we'll just leave creator, and there you go. And now we can also associate a household with this home. We already created the green household, so we'll just connect that. So here it is. I could also, search for it if it didn't pop up in the list immediately, and then I click that button to link it. Then we have space here for any associated photos and memories. You wouldn't naturally add a photo or memory via this window here. This is more just for your information. Once you start adding photos and memories via our add snapshot or add memory buttons, and you associate it with this particular property, then those photos and memory records will be linked here as well. And if the home is associated with a legacy, then you can also add that here, as well as any generations from that legacy that are associated with the home. And here also a field that you wouldn't be using directly, but if you associate any plans to the property via other views in the Sim Guardian, then they would be listed here as well. So we just close that. And again, I don't want to get too much into the details, too much into the weeds about how to, create a property or maybe a character or a household. And so I'll close that for now. But when we scroll down, we can now check in our households. We'll see under the management view, the green household. We have the name of the household, the members, the property, and the world, so where they are in the save file. Then any households that have actually been placed in the world are listed here. I can see it in the moment. I don't see Iris. Why is that? So if I go to settings, we can see we have a grouping setting pre-selected by neighborhood. And so if I had added a neighborhood, then we would see Iris's household listed here. But we can just simply remove that if we don't use neighborhoods in our Sims 3 worlds, which actually classically we don't. So I think I might actually edit the template to remove that grouping by default, because I think in general, most of us aren't using neighborhoods. It's more of a Sims 4 thing. But via the settings here is where you would be able to customize that to your liking. And then as you can see, once that grouping filter is removed, now we can see the household as a gallery card. We see the name of the household. We have the member portraits shown here as well, the lot that they live on, so the build. In this case, is the property is the green home. And we can also mark this as our favorite or current household. So I can mark this as my favorite household. And then we have here a view for our current household, which I had marked the green household as my current, but if I do that now, we'll see it listed under the current household. It's also one of my favorites, so it's listed here. And if I wanted to move members in between households, I could do so here. So at the moment, we don't have any other households, but I can show that on an example in another view. But basically, this is where you would see any households that you've created. And if you open up rotational gameplay, you'll also be able to manage that from here as well. I didn't add an order or a round to Iris's household, so she's not listed here, but I'll do that real quick. I'll do another deep dive on rotational gameplay, but I'll just show real quick. Where was that? Was that under core details? No, it was under additional details. So if I scroll over here and I say she comes first and she's currently in round 1, then you'll see if we scroll down, now we have the green household listed here and we can move her. So now she's in round 2. And then under households, we'll see also more information. But like I said, I don't want to get too much into detail of that, so I'll just close it off. I want to show you though real quick the properties that we've added. So we didn't associate a neighborhood to the green home, so it's just listed here under no associated neighborhood. But we can also remove that grouping, as I mentioned before. We can just say group by none, and then we just have all the properties listed. In this all properties view, we have a gallery view where you'll see the photo of the home, the name, what type of lot it is, any property details that you've added. So the top level, most important ones. So the value, the size, how many bed and baths it has, and how many floors. You'll see here also the build status in one view, and then also any households that are associated with that property are also listed here. But I'll go more into detail about these different views when diving into my example save files, because they have a lot more in them. But that's basically how you could get started with a save file. So you create the save file, you apply the correct template, and then you just start using these buttons to add characters, households, and whatnot. And then they're neatly organized once you've created them in their corresponding sections here. Real quick, I want to go back to the home page. I mentioned before that this button here by default will always create a Sims 4 save file. I want to show you real quick how to change that if you're a Sims 3 or a diehard Sims 2 player and you're never playing the Sims 4 anyways. I want to show how you can edit this button. So first you have to unlock this home page. So you can click this button up here, then you head over to lock page, you click this toggle, and then the page will become unlocked. And now you can go over to this save file here, this button, and when you hover over it, you'll see this little gear icon come. This is the edit button. You click that, and now you can edit this button. So there's only one thing you have to change here. It's this here. So this determines the template that will be applied to the new page that you create, so the new save file page. So if we click that, let's say you're a Sims 2 player. You just click the Sims 2 save file, you click done, and now whenever you click this new save file button, a Sims 2 save file will be created instead of a Sims 4 save file by default. Again, if you play various of the different games, and maybe the Sims 2 is your favorite, you can keep the Sims 2 for yourself as your default. And then whenever you create a new Sims 3 or Sims 4 save file, you simply delete all the contents from the page, and then you can apply the appropriate template. But alternatively, if you've unlocked the page, you can also add save files via this new page button here. So this will create, so since it's under Sims 2, it'll create a Sims 2 save file. Or you can click this button here to create a new save file, or you can click this button here and then click the appropriate template for the game you want to create. There are multiple ways to create a save file. The most easiest is simply to click this button, or if your page is unlocked, you can do it via those ways. You can also, of course, directly from within the database, so the save files database, create save files. I've designed the Sim Guardian so that you don't really have to hang out in these databases if you don't want to. The database is always great if you want to do something in bulk, if you want to bulk edit a bunch of records, but generally, if you want to create a save file, you'll be doing that via this interface here. But now I want to dive deeper into the different sections of the save file record using examples of save files that I've already created in the Sim Guardian and filled with lore and properties and characters. So here we have Keith's save file. If you've been following along on my channel for a little while, you'll be familiar with Keith and Sienna. They are a beautiful couple in Chestnut Ridge, and there's a lot I have planned for them. There might be a little spoiler here and there if you look closely, but I've tried to redact the most important bits. As described before, we have to the left our different sidebars. So here we have the description of Keith's save file. Haven't really updated it too much to not, of course, give anything away. And since we have a calendar connected to this save file record, we also have an indicator of how much time has gone by in our save file for the current year. So 30% of the year is already completed, and we have 39 days left to go. And we see that here as well in this little mini calendar, which I love. I think this is one of my favorite things about my Sim Guardian, that each save file record, if you choose, you don't have to, but if you choose, you can have a little mini calendar and you can follow the progress of your Sim years and your Sim days as they go by. So if I wanted to complete a day, I would just click this button here. And as you can see, we've progressed one day. It's now day 5. In the mini calendar, we can also see in blue the era that I've created for the save file. So this is more just for show. I don't really, apart from maybe my historical saves, work with eras, but if you wanted to create an era for your save file, let's say for a certain era, you want to kick off a new era, or, a historical save file for every reigning king he has or she has their own era in which they reign, then that can be something that you can associate with your calendar. Then we have the general date, so we have the year, the day, and the season here in green. In purple, we have the actual weekday. And then here we have the little calendar, and all the little dots indicate the days that have gone by. And so that's a nice little one glance overview of how the year is progressing. Here we have this visual, and then here we have, straight up the percentage. As you can see, when I progressed by that one day, here this updated as well. And so we have 32% complete and 38 days left to go in our calendar year. So that's great. And then if I go here, so here are different sections. So I'll just go through each one of them one by one. So here is our calendar. I'll real quick actually just uncheck day 4 because it's actually not completed in my game and I don't want to have wrong progress. So at the top here, so we have two groups of linked views in the calendar section. For one, we have our current year, past years, current era, past eras, and future eras. So if you're planning any eras, you can click them here as well. And so it's pretty simple, but there's more details about how to do that in the instructions. And as I mentioned in the companion guide, video tutorials on how to set up a calendar. But the real magic, where it really gets interesting, is your calendar views here. So we have our different day records here, as you can see, all organized by weekday so that, this actually looks like a calendar. Here in this instance, they are organized by season. So these are all of our fall days, these are all of our winter days, and so forth. But we also have the possibility to organize them by week, which in this case is better because, as you might see here, some gallery cards for these day records might be a bit larger depending on how much content you've added to them, if they have events, if they have notes added, holidays. So I like to also have this calendar by week view, which, as you can see, is just a little bit more orderly. It's a little bit squished, but you always have the option to open this view as a full page. So I'll right click it and then I'll say open a new tab. And as you can see, my calendar can breathe. We have the different days that have been checked off so far. We see in which season each of these days are, again, the weekdays here. And then if we scroll down, we can see I've added notes to some of the different day records. So to do that, you just simply click on this button here. So you hover over the day record, you click on this little pen, and then you can add notes. So these are notes. Super easy. I can also edit notes, just by clicking inside of that little box here. I can, check off calendar days directly from within this view, so I don't have to do it via the mini calendar. I can do it from here as well. I can also add holidays to a calendar. So I click on this button here, and let's say it's Snowflake Day. So I can just add that here. And then we have a holiday added to the calendar. Now I go more into detail again in the companion guide on how to set up your calendar with holidays and all that, because you can also create custom holidays and add those to your calendars. But that is also a quick way. Like, let's say you just made up a holiday, then you can, at any time after creating your base calendar, you can add them to your calendar. I also have any events that I've created added to the calendar. Now this here is not much of a spoiler because I know Keith and Stan are not going to want to have a winter wedding. This was just to show an example of how that could work. So I created an event as a plan in my save file. So if I go here, if I just close this real quick and go to plans. So if we head over to events, you'll see this is where I have the event saved for Keith and Sienna's wedding. In the Sim Guardian, when it first was released, we had only one template for events, but since then I've created a wedding event template as well. I touched on that briefly in a previous video, which I'll leave linked below if you're curious, because I do not know when I'll be getting to a deep dive for the wedding template. But in essence, you can see for our different events, whether it's a wedding event or a general event, you'll see the title and the gallery card, the date when it's planned, the game date, the year, the week, the day and the season. You'll see who is involved. So, the most top level important characters, the location, and then you have a button here where you can complete it. So if we go back over to the calendar view here, you'll see it's not yet completed, but let's say we did complete this event. I click complete here. It goes away from the events because it's no longer a relevant event that's recent. It'll be tucked away under completed plans. But if I go to the calendar view, you'll see it's been checked off. So here is the magic of formulas, Notion doing its thing. You don't have to worry about all that. You just click complete and then it's checked off in your calendar, nice and neat. So I love it. And so basically in your save file calendars, you can collect notes, you can add holidays, you can of course progress the days by checking them off. And if you've added any events as plans in your save file, then they will also show up in the calendar if you've associated a calendar day and year with them. So I've just not brought it back because I do not want to forget about their wedding that will be happening, not in winter, but more on that soon. So that wraps up how the calendar works in the save file, more or less. Real quick, I also want to show the wonders of tracking time for a Sims 3 or Sims 2 save file as well. So as we saw for the Sims 4, it was relatively simple because for the Sims 4, you also have an easy to templatize system. It's always 4 seasons. Each season always has the same amount of time, depending on your season settings. It's always a 14-day, spring, for example, 14-day long summer and whatnot. So it's more or less easy to set up in that sense. I mean, it wasn't easy by any means anyways in general, but in comparison to Sims 2 or Sims 3, it was a breeze. Now, then we came though to the specific situation of Sims 3 and Sims 2 where with Sims 3, you can get very custom and the save file can have, just 3 instead of all 4 seasons. So you can remove a season entirely. You can also have the seasons have different lengths. So you can have a 5-day spring, whereas your summer is maybe just, 2 days long. So that made it a bit tricky. I wasn't able to create a template of calendar records for you to work with like I could for Sims 4. So instead, for our Sims 2 calendar, we have individual days. So you really count day for day. This actually goes quite well with how time is tracked in The Sims 3 anyways, because in The Sims 3, in the UI panel, you can actually see in which week you currently are in your save file. So I also add some details in the companion guide and the instruction here on based on that weekday and week number to backtrack on which day you are in your save file. So in this case, I was on day 82 currently in my save file in year 3. So I was able to calculate that knowing like how long my seasons were on average. That led me to know how long my years were. That's how I'm able to now keep track of time also for my Sims 3 save files, just by creating individual day records. Again, in the companion guide, I go into detail about how this is done, but it is relatively straightforward. And then just like for my Sims 4 save file, I can complete days as they move on. And then it's also completed in my overall calendar view. If I go to the full page view, you'll see instead of being organized by season, my calendar days in my Sims 3 save files are organized and grouped by weeks. So I can see in which week I currently am in my save file. And then on the actual day, I can see in which season I am in. When it comes to Sims 2, it was a little bit more complicated, even more so than that. The seasons are always 5 days long, so that's one thing. But I had the issue that because they're always 5 days long, as you can see here already in this Millie calendar, I can have different seasons in the same week. So if I go to the bigger calendar, you can see we have the first 2 days of the week are summer and then the rest are fall. And that made it tricky for me when it came to the process and the flow I used to make it easy for you to archive past days in your calendar. Don't want to get into the details and all that, just know that there are some pretty smart formulas working in the background so that when you press the button here, it will archive any past weeks. And really only the completely past weeks. And that is independent of the season that the day was currently in, because weeks aren't just one season, they can be different seasons. It was a little bit complicated. But just as we saw for the Sims 4 save file, you can complete your days as they move on in your mini calendar, and you can do the same in your calendar here. And I didn't mention this before, but if you want to archive past weeks, you can do so with the button here. And it's similar for your Sims 4 save files as well. So if I open this up, there's a button here to reset your calendar and start a new year. So it will basically erase all of the notes that you took, remove any events. The holidays will remain though, so you don't have to always start from fresh with that. And it works quite similar with our Sims 2 and Sims 3 save file calendars as well. Though in that case, it won't erase necessarily the notes, it'll just remove any days that have been completed if they are in a completed week. So for example, if I were to click that button now for this save file, nothing would happen because this week here hasn't been completed yet. But once it has, and then I click that button, this entire week of days will be removed. Now let's dive into the plan section. So we have a My Tasks view, which is actually new in the Sim Guardian. Previously, you would be able to save any story ideas, any goals related to characters under these other views, but your actual general day-to-day tasks for your save file, for some reason, I hadn't included a dedicated tab for that in your save file record. We have that in the My Goals dashboard, but not in the save file record. And so thanks to a lovely simmer who had this idea for their own save file records, I've added that to mine as well now, and to yours as well if you were to get the Sim Guardian or if you've gotten it in the meantime. But I haven't quite added any tasks for my Keith's save file, so I will head over to Edith's save file, where I have collected a handful of plans already. So one is redacted because it's a bit of a storyline situation. I don't want to spoil the beans, but here are just general things that, I mean, they are related to characters, but they're more for me, I would say, than like an actual goal that Augustina has. Like, she doesn't want to get to know herself, you know what I mean? So this is a goal that's just for me, and so it's actually separate in the sense that it's a simmer goal and not a general goal, which if it were a general goal, it would show up for Augustina and Decker in their plans, but it's not really relevant to them directly. So I like that I can connect them here. So if I were to, for example, edit this one, I can associate characters to this plan. I can link a legacy, an achievement, a property, anything that's relevant to that goal, and that way I have a quick link to it if I wanted to access it. For example, I can click here, and then I can click Estefani, and then I have a quick access to her profile if I needed. I can close that. So that's what I really love about Notion as well. Everything is interlinked depending on how you set up your Notion. So in my case, the Sim Guardian, everything is very much interlinked and connected. So I can access different elements, different, characters, properties from different views. And I feel like it just makes things more efficient. But, as you can see here, if I click back into here, I can add notes, which I've done in the case of this one here. And so these are just different little plans that I've made for myself. For example, I want Michael to get friendly with the local dads in the neighborhood because he's about to become a dad himself. Well, they're not pregnant yet, but it's in the works. So just general goals for me, like, for example, importing a Calm Studio logo into the game. That's nothing that has to do with any of my Sims directly. And it's more of a watcher task, I would say, than a sim task, of course, obviously, right? So this is quite handy, and then I can check it off here by clicking the complete button if I finished it, and then it'll be tucked away here under completed plans. And so if ever I needed to bring it back, that's where I could find it. So I find the My Tasks view quite handy. Then we have the Goals view, which basically lists any goals, any current goals relevant to my Sims. And when I say current, I mean my Sims can have various text goals. So they can have bucket list goals. This was before the Life and Death pack came out, so I had actual general bucket list goals just per life stage. And so in this case, you will only see life goals for a Sim that are relevant to their current life stage. So in this case, Ida Muniz has a life goal to listen to a liked genre of music, which ironically inspired by a Life and Death bucket list goal, so that I've saved now in the Sim Guardian as well. But is a goal that is linked to her current life stage, so being a young adult. I also have other bucket list goals for Ida Muniz for when she's an adult and when she's an elder, but they're not shown here because she currently in my Sim Guardian is a young adult. And so I don't want my view here to be cluttered with goals that aren't currently relevant to her life stage. Like, obviously she could still complete a goal that she's planned for her elder life stage today already, but it's not as front of mind or priority as something that I legit have planned for her current life stage. So I only want relevant goals shown here. And so we can see that is also the case for our aspiration goals. So here we have goals for Michael Bell that are associated with his current aspiration, but we only have the goals shown here that are relevant to the current milestone he is on. So aspirations often have, maybe 2, 3, 4 different milestones to reach. So different groups of goals to achieve. I don't want all of them listed here, right? So instead, there's some magic formula stuff running in the background that makes it to where only the currently relevant goals are shown or displayed, if that's clear. And as you can see, they're also organized by household. So we have the character who the goal belongs to, who it's related to, but we also have the household. So if you have any Sims that aren't part of a household, they actually won't be shown here. And so if you want to remove that grouping, you can just go to the settings here, go for none, and then you'll see all of the goals that have been associated with the save file, even the ones that haven't been connected to a character yet. For example, I have goals from a challenge here, so from the Not So Berry challenge. We're currently on Gen 2. Well, not officially, like I said, I'm not actually playing this is just for show, but I've tracked progress for up to Generation 2. So you're only seeing Generation 2 goals, not Generation 3, 4, 5, and whatnot, because currently we're on Gen 2, so we only need to see those goals. I'm just gonna change it back to grouped by, what was it again? By character household. There we go. Nice and neat. But let's head back to Keith's save file. We also have various goals for Keith's save file, quite a few more than in Ida's because we have quite a few more Sims tracked here. And then also if I wanted to complete any of them, I can just click this button here and they'll be checked off. We have here also a view where we can collect story idea. So I could click this new page button here. I can add a new story idea. Click this here. It's a Sims it would be a Sims 4 story idea, and then I can add any notes I have for that idea. And once it's complete, I just click the complete button. Then as mentioned before, we have any events we have saved here. If I wanted to create a new one, I just click on the blue button or on this new page. We can also collect any love matches that we have in mind. So I know we all like to play matchmaker. So I know already that I want Lucas to see if things can work out with Breely, because they didn't work out with Maeve. And it was actually on a date with Maeve where he met Breely at the end, and they seem to get along. So I have this here so I can just keep track of the Sims I'm trying to, marry off. And then also any gameplay ideas I have here that might be different from a story idea, so I just wanted to give you space to save that as well. And then here we also have, if you open that up, we have any past Sim session notes. So I haven't always been consistent when it comes to keeping track of my Sim sessions, which are essentially play sessions. So I've definitely played with Keith more often than this, but not a lot more often. I'm working on that. Sometimes it's hard to find time to play, but if I had made any notes during a Sim session, then I would be able to see that here, and that is quite handy just for a recap. If you're using the Sim session notes consistently, this makes it easy for you to review what happened most recently in your save file, apart from, of course, the general memories that you keep track of. And now when we open up the characters section here, we have different views to see different demographics of our Sims. So first we have the living, so we have that split up by age groups, so baby, infant, and whatnot. We can see here also all the pets are listed here too, based on how old they are. And then depending on how much we know about a Sim, we have various details shown here on their card. So we have their career shown here, the neighborhood and world they live in, any legacies that they might belong to. So as you can see, we have just a bunch of Sims with varying degrees of information that I've logged for them. And as soon as I log that information for them in their character profile, it'll automatically be updated here. And then we can go to the deceased tab, and we can see here we have Gemma Grove. It says the gallery card here lets you know at one glance how she passed. It also, if you added an inscription to her grave, then it also adds that inscription. So here I wasn't really sure anymore who Gemma Grove was. I think I created her for demo purposes. So I got who dis as a grave inscription. But you can be, of course, more nice, like say, oh, will always be remembered or something like that. But I think that's fun. So it's just a simple text you can add to your Sim in their profile, and then it'll be shown here in their deceased record here. And it also shows where they currently reside. So I actually have created a household extra for my deceased. So if I just skip over to that real quick, into the management view, you can see here I have Chestnut Ridge deceased. Emma Grove is one of the members of this household, and that's how I like to keep track of my past Sims. And you can also optionally associate a property with them. So if there's like a cemetery in the world, then obviously that's going to be the property you associate with that household. And then this way you know exactly where their remains are within your save file, so in which world, which neighborhood, and whatnot. And so I just like to create a household for those Sims. So that's our deceased, and then we have an overview of our single Sims. And here, of course, what information would you need to know there? Maybe their sexual orientation, so that you know who they can be paired up with, who they'd be compatible with. And so here I have, a bunch of heterosexual Sims and a bunch of undecided. And then we have a tab for our couples. So far I've recorded Sienna and Keith as couples. When I do a deep dive on the character profiles, I'll go more into how you can create relationships between Sims. But these two are just normal partners with each other, and you can see a little bit of information about them, which world they live in, and here also who is their partner. Then I have a tab to collect all my married Sims. Like in the couples view, we also have their spouse listed so you can see who they're actually married to. Then we have an occult tab. So far I just have a bunch of werewolves in my world, which actually I have removed werewolf status for everyone because the werewolves get on my nerve with all that raging they be doing. So I need to update this in my Sim Guardian and remove the werewolf status from these Sims. But for now, it's interesting to see that. And oh, I see I have no life state for Tatami. That is not correct. Tatami, I know, is a human being, so we will add that right now. And whoops, they're out of the occult tab because that's not where they belong. And then we have a pets tab where you can see an overview of all the pets you have in your save file. And here they're organized by household, because I thought that would be the most useful. And then you see here in their card also in which world they live in. And then one of my favorite demographics are the business owners. And so here we see the different business owners in your save file organized by household, but you also see on their various cards the businesses they actually own. So in this case, Keith owns the Nobu Cabin, which is a residential rental. Christopher owns the Moodwood Trading Post, which I don't even remember right now what kind of business that is. But Sienna Grove also owns a business, but that is redacted at the moment. So we don't know any more about that at the moment, but I will share in a future video. And then we can move on to highest net worth. We also have below here in the transactions section here, also other leaderboards that show you more or less the same information, but here you can also see which Sims have the highest net worth in your save file. Based on the ones where you've actually added details about their funds, and you can see on an individual sim by sim basis who is the richest. Net worth being their personal funds together with the properties that they own. And then we have notable characters. So here we have Sienna and Keith. Obviously in this save file, they are the stars. And so that's it. Those are the different views we have in the characters section. I just think it's nice. It's a nice way to have an overview of all the Sims that you've saved in your Sim Guardian for that particular save file, with additional information at a glance about each one. And it's super easy to then access them. So you can click on any card and that Sims profile will open up in side peek view where you can directly make edits to it. Let's close that again. And then we have the lore section, maybe one of my favorite sections. So let's open that up. So for when we have a timeline section, so if any events have been completed, then they would be showing up here. Let me actually just do that here real quick. Let's just mark the wedding as complete. And then as you see, once I've completed it, it's listed here in the events timeline under year 1. We can see Keith and Sienna had their wedding. And then in the memory timeline, similarly, we have all the memories that I've collected for the save file so far organized by year. So they would be grouped by the year that they happened in. And we see here the game date, the cover image, the name, the lore category. So we have different categories for our lore. You don't have to always assign one, but we have love stories, feuds, secrets, scandals, and successes. And then here we also have a space where you can see where it happened, like if it happened at a specific property. Here you can also edit the date and the calendar year that was associated with that particular memory, and also if it was a significant experience for a certain sim. But there'll be a deep dive about memories and how that works. But I find that quite useful to have this little timeline in your save file. It also exists on a sim by sim basis as well. So in the character profile, you also have a timeline so that you can kind of like see a character arc as well, which is especially fun if you associate those various lore categories, right? You know, successes, failures. And then in the history tab here, we have more details about each memory. So here we have our lore organized. We also have the actual story that we wrote for each individual memory shown here as well. If you don't like that, like say you write really long stories, then you can go to the settings, to property visibility, you can remove the story from the display, and then as you can see here, you just have this clean view of the individual memories with the name, the game date, who was involved, and where it took place. If you knew that information, then you can add that. And then if there are any feuds, secrets, scandals, those are all organized here in one glance. You basically then have the lore at a glance. We also have notable characters shown here as well. We have an overview of all of the memories associated with this save file so far listed here. We have all the photos for your save file saved here. To quickly have like a full view, you can just click on the little thumbnail icon under the gallery view here. So this here or this here, and then you can see that photo in full page view at a glance. And so that is nice, all that lore. And as you can see here, if I scroll down, there's a load more button. So that's if I have like a lot of photos, then I can just click load more, because I think each gallery view by default only loads a certain amount to not, overwhelm your PC or your internet connection. And so that's how you can see all of the photos if you don't see them in one go. Then we also have a Mementos tab. I'll actually open up another save file to show you that. For the Tarot save file, I've already collected a few mementos, in particular for the Tarot Legacy. And as you can see, they are also organized and grouped by the Tarot Legacy. If I had other legacies in this save file, they would also be grouped in their respective legacies. We can see we have Evelina's will, which I haven't quite completed yet, so I could add the actual details about her will here. We have here also photos of her wedding with Justin. We have the lily pad painting she painted during her honeymoon with Justin after their wedding. And we have also a record player that the family really is sentimental about. As you can see in the gallery view here, we have the description for each memento. We have the type of memento it is. So in this case, it's correspondence, the will. Memorabilia are the photos. The painting is art. The record player I would categorize as an artifact. You can also create custom ones, custom types. And we also have the legacy it belongs to, the original owner, and if it's been passed down, then we also see the current custodian. I think mementos are also a really favorite thing that I like to keep track of in the Sim Guardian. Ever since the Life and Death pack, we can actually formally create heirlooms in the game. But whether or not you have that pack, with the Sim Guardian, you can keep track. You can mark certain items as mementos and collect them. I think mementos can be really important to the lore you're building, so it's really nice to be able to have a place to save all of that. And back to Keith's save files. Let me close up lore, and we can move on to legacies. So here I have just various views for my active legacies, so basically any legacy that I've made edits to in the last month. Inactive legacies, which so far I only have one legacy in this save file. Any completed legacies, so maybe a legacy that I've considered as complete, maybe I've reached 10 generations and that's all I really was aiming for with that particular legacy. Or maybe it was a legacy that I was playing just for a challenge, so once I've completed it, I can mark it as complete. I can assign it a date where it was completed, and then it'll show up in this view. Any legacies I have in planning show up under this tab, and then for founders, if I have any legacies existing, then the founders will be shown here together with their net worth. I've made a video about legacies in the Sim Guardian before, but I'll definitely do a fresh deep dive because I'm sure the one or the other thing has changed since that last video. By the way, it's also possible to have a photo for your legacy here. In this case, I removed it from the view, but I will show you in the Tarot save file, for example. If I close this up, you can see I have the family crest as the photo, as the cover photo for the gallery card. By default, these legacy views display the cover photo for the various legacy records, but you might not have a family crest or legacy photo for everyone. So if you don't want to see that, you just go to settings, layout, and then for the card preview, you select none. And then you'll only see the cards without the cover photo. But back to the key save file. So let's close up our legacies. So that's basically the section where you will see all the legacies that you have associated with the save file. And then moving on to the households tab, we already had a quick peek already here when we were making our Sims 3 save file. But this one is slightly different because as you can see here, the households are grouped by the worlds that they're associated with. In The Sims 4, we of course have various different worlds, quite a few, and so it can be easier to get an overview of the different households you've added if they're organized by the world that they are associated with. The only issue with this grouping though, with this organization, is that any household that hasn't been associated with a property, ergo with a location yet, will not be shown in this view. But if you want to see your homeless Sims as well, then you simply remove the grouping setting here to none, and then all of the different households will be listed, whether they have a home or not. But I'll just change that back to group by world. And so in this view, you have like a table list, your classic spreadsheet view of the different households. So you have here check boxes to say whether or not it's the current household or your favorite household, the name, the members that belong to that household, the property that that household is associated with. So basically where the household is living, so it's residence. And then automatically here, the world and neighborhood for that various property is displayed here as well. And then we have the placed in world view, which is more or less the same thing, but just a different visual. So we have gallery cards here instead of the table view. And we also see the member portraits instead of their names. It's a little bit more compact than the other view. And then we have, as I described before, the tab where you can see any household that you've marked as current, as favorite. And then when we go to move members view, I couldn't show it as easily beforehand in the Sims 3 save file we made because we only had one household, but here I can show you. So if I wanted to move Alice from the Eclectic Arts household, let's say she passed away, so I can move her up here, and now she's part of my deceased household in Chestnut Ridge. And if I click on this, on Chestnut Ridge deceased household, you'll see indeed she's in here. So she's now one of the members of this household. I still would have to, of course, edit her profile to mark her as passed away and give, a cause of death and everything. But this is how you can quickly move a sim from one household to the next. For example, maybe Leslie wants to move in with the Landgrabs. Then I can easily just drag and drop her here. I don't have to necessarily open up the Landgrab household record and then add her from there. I can just do it from this view if I wanted. And then we have the rotational gameplay view. So here in this section, we have space for notes that we want to make about rotational gameplay. And then here is where the real magic happens with rotational gameplay. So I can open that up in tabs. So, we have that space. Just a quick recap. So we have different numbers here, different, select options to indicate in which order the households are in my rotation. And so the Fox household is household number 1, Wolf household number 2, and here we have the rounds. So we have the households organized in rows, indicating which order they are in relation to each other. And then we have here in the different columns, the various rounds. And so I can just drag the household to the next round as it proceeds, and then I would mark then the next household as current. And then once that household has completed its round, I could then mark the next household as current, and so on and so forth. And then, so this is basically the rounds view. And then in the households view, we have more details about the households themselves. So here we also have that overview of in which order and round that particular household is. We also have the notes, we have the different members, the property they live on, the neighborhood they live in, their funds and their net worth. Again, these are automatic properties, so nothing that you have to click into and change. These will tally up automatically based on details you've added to the various character profiles and households. And also note that these households are grouped based on the round that they're in. So if the Fox household were no longer current and the Wolf household was, and because the Fox household now is in round 2, it'll then move below to the bottom of the spreadsheet here. And then you can move on with this household and so on and so forth until all of the households are in round 2. And then it starts from the start again with the Fox household. And then we have the character spreadsheet, which, as the name already says, it goes more into detail about the different characters in your different rotational households. And so here we have the Fox household, where we have, for example, Juniper, any notes I might have about her. We have any character goals that are current for her. So again, as I explained beforehand, this doesn't list every single goal that I have associated with Juniper. It only has the goals associated with her that are relevant to her current life stage, if it's a bucket list goal, or if she has an aspiration with, various goals, then it pertains to the current milestone that she's working on. But it could also include any general goals that I've added to her. And then any planned events we have here. So as you can see here, I have like a demo event. It looks like I created for Keith, that's shown here. And we also have any legacy roles that could be relevant. So Keith is the founder of his legacy. We have their life state, their age. We have their life goal, current career. Again, always peep for that gear icon that lets you know that there's nothing here for you to change or add. So I could change the life state and the age of Juniper here, but her life goal or current career, I could only change from her character profile. This here only automatically pulls up that information for efficiency purposes, but you can't actually edit it here. And then we continue. We have also any skills that are in progress. So this automatically lists any skills that your sim is currently working on that hasn't been mastered yet. Also, if your sim is currently working on their degree or at school, then you would also see that here. For example, Ren Grove is currently in elementary school and he's currently an A student, so that's what the A stands for. And also you have any information about the spouse of the sim, their partner, and their children. So this is quite a thorough spreadsheet, similar to what we are already familiar with when we're using, an Excel sheet or G Sheets to keep track of our rotational gameplay. But now we have it all in Notion with a lot of the data being automatically pulled in. For example, the character goals, the life goals, and whatnot. So you always have an overview of what's important for that particular sim, but you only have to add that information in one spot. So it's in the character profile where all this is updated, but as you can see, it can be referenced in multiple areas of the Sim Guardian. So in this case, from the save file record itself. And then if you wanted to add a household to the rotation, then you can do that from here. So here you can see there are other households that exist in my save file that haven't been added to the rotational roster, but I could do that here. So for example, if I want to add the Matsuda household, then I can make them go in order number 5 because that's what comes after the Volkov, and they will be in round 1. So that's how you can add a household to the rotation. So you basically here have a list of any households that haven't been added yet, and then you can add them by assigning them an order and a round number. And so now I'll close up the Households tab and we'll move on to Properties. So first we have an overview of all of the properties that I've saved so far from my save file. And as you can see, each of them has various information about that property. So we have the property type and which neighborhood it is. It's already grouped by the world it belongs to. We also have the general property details like the value and the size. And we also have information about the build status and any households that are related to that property. In some cases, the property is also related to a business, a character-owned business. And so I have here a tag that automatically displays when that's the case. And we also have here an indication if the lot is associated with a small business. As you can see here, we have a few more. So of course, Moonwood Trading Post, owned by Christopher, as mentioned before. And we have our residential rental, our Nobi Cabin, owned by Keith Fox, both character-owned businesses. So we have that little tag there as well. So that you see, at a glance, which lots are related to businesses. And so as you can see here, there's just a few lots that I've collected that are either just placed already in the world as community lots or exist as homes for households to live in. And then we have an in progress view, which I think is probably quite useful for our builders. So I'll open that as a full page. And then we have space to see everything. So I'll just actually edit a property real quick so that we can have it in that view. So for example, I'll have the rustic family house be an idea. If I go back to this view, you can see now it's listed as an idea. And so this is just a way to kind of have a factory line, so to say, for the builds you're working on. You can just drag them based on, their current status. And then that will also update in any other view where the properties are listed. So as you can see, the Rustic Family Horse Ranch is now listed as currently being in landscaping. And if you go back to progress, just go to complete, and then it actually is removed from the view because it just makes for a cleaner look. But if you go back to all properties, you can see now the Rustic Family Horse Ranch is marked as complete. I'll mark it as existing build because that's what it really was, but that's how you can use the in progress view. Then we have the builds in use view, which is basically builds that are occupied by a household or owned by a character. And then we have residential properties, as the name says. These are homes that you have saved in your worlds. They can be occupied or not. For example, Sienna's old home is currently empty, but in this case, the properties are organized by their value. So here we have lots that have a value from 0 to 20,000 simoleons. Here we have from 40 to 60,000 simoleons, and so on and so forth. So this is quite useful if you're a save file builder and you have a bunch of lots that you have added to your save file and you want to come back and you want to see which ones are which value and are empty, then you can, add a household to them as well. So for example, I could click on this card here and I could actually from this view already add a new household if I wanted to. That's what I also love about Notion. There's not one way to do things. You can add a household to a property from the property view, from the property record, from the household record. You can also, assign the property to the household. So that's another way to go about things. Or, wherever you see the property record, there is more likely, if it's a gallery card, you just click on it and then you can add it via that view. Or if there was a table view, I could most likely also add it from there. And then similarly, we have our community lots, but these are all organized by world. And then we have a tab for any lots that are under construction. So that would be any builds that are within this section here. So any lot that would be having a build status of floor plan design, shell construction, landscaping, interior design, or undergoing renovations would be listed here. And anything that we would be brainstorming on would be listed here. So basically any property that is currently marked as an idea. And so that's basically how you can organize your properties for your save files. A really fun section are our groups. So of course in The Sims 4, we have clubs, which are really fun, but I wanted to go a little bit further. So I have created a groups database, which lets you collect not only clubs, but you can also call it a gang or a cult or an organization, a secret society. You can also create custom group types. But basically, this lets you keep track of the different clubs that you've created for your save file. So here in this overview, you would basically see the different clubs organized by the type you've associated with them. And you would also see the different member portraits as well as the leader marked there. And then under the leaders tab, self-explanatory, any leaders of a club are shown here. And then in the members tab, any members of a club are shown here and grouped by the various clubs that they belong to. And then we have our challenges section. So if I open that up here, so if you have any challenges that you have ongoing and you've associated those challenge goals with this save file, then they will be listed here. So only the current ones though. So I've headed over to Ida's save file to show an example because I haven't actually associated any challenges with the Keith save file yet. But if I open up the legacy challenges, you'll see here for the Not So Berry challenge that we have the generation 2 goals listed here. Again, I try to keep these views uncluttered and as efficient as possible, which means I try to make sure that only the goals that are currently relevant are displayed. So in this case, for the Not So Berry challenge, we have goals for various different generations, but we don't need to see, of course, Generation 8's goals at this moment because we're currently on Generation 2. And so in this view for this save file, which has this particular challenge associated with it, we only see the goals that are relevant to the current generation. And we can also see which legacy it is associated with. And so if I had more legacy challenges where the goals were associated with this save file, then I would see them listed here. And in general, whenever you're creating a challenge, whether it's a legacy, a build, or a character challenge, in my instructions and in my video guide, I always tell you to make sure to associate the goals with a character, with a legacy, a build, and a save file, depending, of course, on what type of challenge it is. Not every challenge goal will, of course, be associated with a build if it's a character challenge and vice versa. But in general, there are a handful of things that you should always make sure to connect the sub goals to, because there is the overall challenge record, which keeps track of these sub goals. But then there are the goals themselves, these little sub goals, as seen here, that need to be also connected to the save file to make sure that, they show up here and you can keep track of them. But I go into detail about that in the companion guide. And I've made a video a while back when I was building the Sim Guardian. I can link that also in the description below so you can see at that time how I was keeping track of challenges in the Sim Guardian or how I was planning to do so. It's changed slightly, but it's still quite similar. So I'll leave that link down below. But that's basically in a nutshell how that works. And from this view, you can even check and mark these sub goals as done. But for the most part, you would actually probably usually be managing your challenges within a challenge record directly. But this is a space where you can have like a bird's eye view of where you currently stand on your various challenges and their goals. And then last but not least, we have our transactions section. So for each character, even also properties, you can keep track of their transactions. So basically their financial history, their expenses, their income. You can assign various categories to these transactions. I think it's really fun if you like to micromanage. You can also just ignore this entirely if you don't. But you can basically from a character profile or from a household profile, from there you have buttons that you can use to quickly add a transaction. And those transactions here, you can then see listed in general. So here you can see the latest transactions associated with a sim or, with an achievement or a property. You can also see the category and what was spent or earned. So you can see here organized either by the last 7 days or the last 30 days or, last few months. We also have leaderboards. So here we have business leaderboards. I just now noticed this isn't quite correct. So I hadn't set up the filter for this one quite yet. So you'll see here in the setup, it tells you to add the save file's name to the filter of the latest transactions and the business leaderboard views below. And so I can just show you how that would work. You just click on the save file filter here and you copy in the name of that save file. Let me do that here as well. And then it will make sure to list only the actual relevant businesses. In this case, for Ida, there are none, but I'll actually just pop back to Keith's save file because I think we'll have more to see there. So if I open this up and now open up business leaderboards, yes, now you can see we have Sienna's business here, which, we're not spilling too much about that today, but you can see it's currently made a net loss. So it's the only business currently in the world for which I have tracked transactions. So it's not the only business that I've tracked in general in the Sim Guardian, but it's the only one I've tracked transactions for, which is why it's the only one that is in the leaderboard at the moment. And it's currently the best performing and worst performing because it's literally the only one there. If you're consistent and you track the finances for every business, then you'll see more businesses here listed, and you will actually see then which ones were best and worst performing. I'll just close that. And then similarly, we have here our character leaderboards. We have the highest net worth, which includes not only the funds that the character has, but also the accumulation of the value of properties that they own. And then here we have a leaderboard based only on their funds. So the highest funds, and here the lowest funds. So the brokest Sims from top to bottom, and here the wealthiest from top to bottom. You might notice here that these profile photos are a bit cut off. That's an unfortunate bug in Notion at the moment, but I like to just for myself fix that by just moving the photos from in the way they're displayed. So I just go to property visibility and I move portrait photo down. I don't think it's a high priority for Notion to solve this because obviously it's not really much of a breaking bug. So I might end up changing how this works by default, that by default the property order is always name, portrait photo, funds indicator, because that's basically how the bug works. It only happens if the portrait photo is front and center here, which is where I originally wanted it, next to the name. But by simply moving it down underneath the name to be next to the funds, it works. And so I think moving forward in a future update of the Sim Guardian, I might just change that. But it's only an issue for the character leaderboards. If I continue to the household leaderboards, you'll see for some reason it's not an issue for the household leaderboards. The property thumbnails show just fine. But here, similarly like with the character leaderboards, we have here the households listed by highest net worth, and then here highest funds, lowest funds as well. And then the same goes for legacies. With legacies, you can even open up the toggle here and you can see it on a generation level, how much money each generation earned. In this case, Generation 2 hasn't really gotten started yet, so they don't really have much to show for themselves. But if you had multiple generations, you could open up this toggle and then see on a generation basis how much each generation has contributed to the overall net worth. And then we have the richest living successors and the most valuable properties that are associated with a legacy. And then we have our group leaderboards as well. So we have the most lucrative clubs. In this case, there have been no transactions associated with a club, but as soon as you do, you'll see here their funds here and see which one is making the most money. And then we have also the wealthiest leaders. So as you can see, Sienna, leader of the Timberland Union, is the wealthiest leader of a club. And so those are our leaderboards, which I think is quite fun. So you can find that on the save file record page. So basically, it just shows how wealth is distributed in your save file based on whether or not you're looking from the lens of a business, households, individual characters, or legacies. So that is more or less how a save file is structured and what you can find in the various sections. Again, you can add new legacies characters via this section here, or you could also do it directly via these linked views by clicking on these new page, new buttons. So that was my deep dive on how you can create a save file record in the Sim Guardian and keep track of your save file, your characters, your properties and whatnot for a save file within that particular record. If there's anything you'd like me to dive deeper on, if you have any questions, let me know. Also, if you're curious about anything else about the Sim Guardian that you'd like me to do a deep dive on, let me know in the comments as well. I think next up, I'll be creating a deep dive on characters and how to create a character profile and fill in all those details. I also have one planned for how to collect your builds in your Sim Guardian and so much more. So definitely stay tuned. And let me know in the comments below if there's anything in particular you'd like to know more about.